Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest edition of AmiSights. I am Lynn Ozer, and I am here today with my colleagues and friends, Julie Zarr and Heather Hoover. We are going to have an exciting interview with them to talk all about multi-funding and how they got here and what working at multi-funding is all about and how we can help all of you, our listeners. So welcome, ladies. Glad to have you here today. And let's start out with just a brief background on each of you and how you ended up here at multi-funding. So why don't we start with Heather? She's been here the longest.
Thanks, Lynn. So I'm Heather Hoover. I've been with MultiFunding for 7.5 years now. And I had a very, I would say, unusual path to multi-funding in that I had been looking to return back to the workforce. I've been home for a little while with my children, and I had worked in finance previously. And I was trying to get back into just trying to figure out how I could kind of get back in and pick up my career again. And I had met with Ami and the whole multi-funding team just to learn about multi-funding, what it was, and it just wasn't a good fit. They didn't need anybody at the time, but it was super helpful, and I loved meeting everybody. About a month later, I actually was in the middle of getting my hair done, and Ami called, and I had to pick up the phone, and he said, "Listen, I'm in an unusual situation." He actually said, "Do you believe in serendipity?"
Yeah.
I have an unusual situation where he had a former employee that he loved dearly. She did a great job, and she had a wonderful opportunity, but had to give very short notice. And he said, "Can you start tomorrow?" And so I came in.
So typical Ami.
Right. I came in, I shadowed with the woman who was leaving for about 3 days. And then I was off and running, and I've never looked back. So I really was very grateful for the opportunity. It was not your normal recruiting, interviewing path. And I couldn't be happier. And I really love our multi-funding team, but also the clients we work with are really, really what make our job interesting. But that was my path to multi-funding.
We will talk more about our clients and our team in just a minute, but let's introduce Julie to everyone.
Hello, everybody. Julie Zarr. I've been with MultiFunding almost a year. It'll be a year in December. I know. Yay, I made it. My career path was completely different than Heather's. I spent over 20 years with Wells Fargo's SBA lending division and decided to make a change and went to a smaller lender. And that was just kind of a weird scenario of how that one ended up not working out. But out of the blue, Ami called me and we talked for about 10 or 15 minutes. We set up a phone interview, had talked again for about 10 or 15 minutes. And then I flew to Philadelphia, and same thing, was told I could change my flight because he wanted me to take the job that day. And I'm like, you have to wait. And then out of just pure luck, one of my brokers called me literally the next Monday and said, "I have a deal. Are you in a new position yet?" And so I called and accepted the position. So
that's great.
And the rest is history. So
well, you're here for life, because as Ami always says, they either last 6 months or they never leave. So it's kind of interesting, the culture here. Let's talk a little bit about the culture. What do you find to be the draw that does make people stay and not leave? Is it our clients? Is it our mission? What do you think, Heather?
Well, I'll start with our clients because that's sort of the easier answer, and then we'll loop back to what at multi-funding and our relationship with each other, which is so valuable. But our clients I always say is what make our days so interesting. And sometimes you wish for a boring day. We never have a boring day. But when you learn the blood, sweat, and tears that our clients have put into building their businesses, and maybe they've been through ups and downs and different economic cycles, and to hear their passion for what they're doing, and for us to be very solutions oriented and helping them achieve their next goal is so fulfilling. And so what they do, I mean, our clients, I love our clients. I love the value and the feeling of helping them, but learning like, wait, that's a business? You thought of that? And it's been, I've worked on projects for everything from, a limousine company to a water ice manufacturer to a business trying to fund AI technology. It just is so fascinating when you learn what people do all day with their time in their businesses.
True. It's true. How about you, Jewel? You're new and you came from what Ami calls the dark side, which is where I was. I spent all my career in banking and in banks, and Lord knows this is a lot different. So what about you? Is it as refreshing for you as it is for me?
That's exactly what it is. To not be stuck in one credit box, but to have, several hundred credit boxes, that makes a huge difference. And to Heather's point, it gives so many more opportunities to our customers. And I think that's probably the biggest eye-opening scenario that I've been through since I've been here, not prepared for what I could actually do that I could never do before. So it's been so lovely.
Okay.
And you're correct. And probably am a lifer because that whole situation makes everything so much nicer.
I know, as soon as you find someone and get behind their story, because of what we do and all the lenders that we're able to work with, it's like they pop into your head and you go, oh, I think I know someone who can do it. Instead of being in a bank for a long time and working in one credit box, and you're like, I really like this deal, but there's no way they're going to get that done here. And it's, God forbid you give it to your competitor. It's just so nice to be able to say, we know somebody and we can help, right? And as far as what it's like to work here, it's different because, first of all, most of us are remote. And we do get to go into the office, and that's my favorite part when we're all together. But how do you find that, Julie? Heather does get to come to the office.
I've been remote for a very long time. So
okay, good.
I was remote well before COVID ever happened. So me working remote has not been, there hasn't been any change other than I very seldom have to leave home, where previously I would have to go and visit branches and people, bankers in person. So I live and die by my phone. Now Teams and Zoom have made a huge difference. So I can actually see a customer in person, well, semi in person.
Yeah.
Because prior to that, I literally did everything 100% via the phone. I probably met in the 20 some years 5% of my customers at best in person. So the whole remote thing is not a big issue for me. I have my days scheduled specifically, and I do things in a very specific pattern so that I make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So it's just been, it was no big change as far as that's concerned. Now I would like to come in and see people, at the office a little bit more, but it's quite the jaunt across the entire country. So
Sure is. But it's really nice for us to have an active employee across the Mississippi from us. It's exciting. And tell me, what is the difference for you as far as like the clients you see on the West Coast versus the East Coast, if any? And do you still focus more on the East Coast?
Well,
I mean, on
since
the West Coast, I mean, yeah.
since taking this position, things have changed quite a bit in that I'm actually doing more transactions on the East Coast than I ever have. And it's through weird circumstances. So, as an example, I had a customer of mine who I worked with 3 years ago, decided he wanted to buy a business. He was working with a broker. He put me in contact with that broker, and now I'm working on all of that broker's transactions, and he's
Right.
off the East Coast. Um,
That's
but the
great.
same thing has occurred with different brokers on the West Coast as well. So really the main difference I would say between the two is I get a lot more seasonality, especially in the Midwest area and the mountain states. So those people, when they are dealing with their business model generally has to have some sort of summer, spring, or late fall scenario, and then they have to have something that covers them during the winter months, because most of them are not necessarily a universal 12-month a year type of industry.
Interesting.
So
That's a good point.
that comes across a lot more on the west side than it does on the east.
Wow, that's very, I never even thought about that. That's
Well,
very
and Julie, I know like your resources have been super valuable to us because even though we talk a lot about how our lender solutions are national, right? And so
correct.
we're not always looking for the perfect regional lender for each of these projects, but we've got really great national lenders that can, again, solve for whatever we might need for whatever transaction. But to that point, you've also been super helpful when we have kind of needed, there's just different structures and circumstances that sometimes need a regional bank and need a bank in their backyard to get comfortable with it. And you've been super helpful with some bank relationships that we don't have regionally, and then kind of guidance on, again, sharing your perspective on credit boxes for some of those banks too. So that's something that for us, it's so valuable that you are in Montana. It's super helpful. So.
We do, I mean, we're really lucky with the types of deals that we do get to see. A lot of them come through Ami's traipsing around the country, making presentations and doing that. And we all know we have the superstar marketing team behind us here at MultiFunding. Kudos and shout out to them. But Heather, what about your ability to bounce ideas off of other people in our world?
Yeah, I really feel again that part of the multi-funding dynamic is we're constantly we're all I'm proud to say that we all do a very good job on our own, but we're so much better together and we can learn so quickly. I'm constantly picking up the phone to discuss structures, and we see some really unusual transactions. If I always say that because there's thousands and thousands of SBA lenders, not everyone needs us. If it's a super plain, if their bank says they'll do it and they do it, that's great. We are so valuable when a bank says, no, we can't do it. And people sometimes mishear that as, oh, it's not SBA eligible, but it's usually just that bank's credit box. And then we do have a solution. So we can think outside the box, but I would say, I'm constantly in the office bouncing ideas off of our other advisors or picking up the phone and calling Julie to talk through a structure and just say like, hey, I remember you worked on a project that had this. How did you solve for that again? And it makes us so much more valuable. Again, our teamwork and our ability to work together, it just makes us more efficient and again, more solutions to provide.
It's great. It is. It's true. And when we listen to each other on our team calls and about the different deals that they have, it does bring up ideas, and we do learn who's doing what in what part of the country, and would this happen or would that happen, which is why we can be so valuable when those banks do say no, and it's really no for us. And if every deal was vanilla, we wouldn't be here. But
Right.
we know that that's not the truth. We're, 31 flavors all the way.
Well, and to Heather's point, I love it when the bank says no, because most of those are people that I've worked with in the past. So then they're sending them to me
That's
so that I can
great.
help that
That's a really
customer get
good
it
point, Julie. Yeah.
so it does make a difference. I mean, it goes back to the limited credit box versus the multiple credit boxes
Mhm.
available for those customers.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the economy right now. We are out of COVID, and supposedly, well, interest rates took a little drop down. I mean, we're still feeling those effects. Tell us what you're seeing in the market right now. Is there chaos? Is it calming down? Are you seeing certain types of deals? I know for a long time, we weren't doing any working capital loans because everyone was flush with the PPP and the EIDL money. And we all know that how that story ends. But what's going on? Talk to me about the economy and what you're seeing in small businesses yourselves.
Well, Lynn, to what you just mentioned, I think is really what I've seen the biggest difference in the last 6 months is it's a liquidity and a cash flow crunch issue for businesses. So they still might be profitable and they still might be doing fine, but their PPP funds have been spent, their idle funds have been spent, and to your point, they just need working capital, not necessarily in a crisis mode that they're losing tons of money, but again, that they actually have to think of outside resources to access working capital as opposed to it being, click here on this website, click here with your bank for the PPP, click here with the SBA for the idle funds, that they actually have to explore outside banking options for it. And I've seen really that difference in the last 6 months.
Absolutely.
And
Julie?
see, I think I would be a little bit opposite of that, at least in the West. I think what I'm seeing more of at this point in time is people that are now ready to buy businesses because it's leveled out. We're past COVID money and we're past the ups and downs that occurred during COVID, and things are finally stabilizing. So people are now trusting the numbers to be ready to finally purchase those businesses.
Well, and we should talk about that a little more because we have seen such an interesting acquisition cycle because we do so much acquisition financing. And that's so interesting you bring that up, Julie, because during COVID, there were immediately following, so starting end of 2020, a lot of those acquisitions really started booming because a lot of people were like, a lot of business owners were like, I'm out, I'm retiring. That was extremely I'm enough and I'm out, I've had enough. And so there was a big boom on, oh, my competitor's retiring, or they didn't pivot as well during COVID as we did. And it's a real opportunity for us to grow our market by acquiring them. And so we saw a huge boom in that. And Julie, I think you're right. I think we're at the subsequent wave of those financials, the ups and downs of COVID have stabilized, and business values are more clear and risk is more clear, but that's a really interesting point.
I think that with the interest rates going down, I think we may see even more business acquisitions. Prior to COVID, we were calling it, in the banking world, because that's where I was before COVID, the silver tsunami, all the baby boomers selling their businesses. And then all of a sudden there was a big, change in the whole world, COVID, and still the effects of COVID. And then the interest rates and so on and so forth. We all know how that was affecting people's ability to get what they believe they should get for their businesses. And those that were able to wait it out, I think we're going to see even more. What do you think about that, Julie?
I'd agree with that. I mean, those people made it through and they've made it past
right.
I mean, literally one of the harshest time frames that I think I've ever seen. And I went through the last recession doing SBA. Right. And I think this was actually worse. Just for the sheer fact of the federal government coming out with these loan programs and not having a clue what they were putting together, and changing it every week. And the SBA district office is going, we don't even know what you're saying at this point. Do you qualify for money? Do you not qualify for money? And lenders the same way. I mean, the way lenders handled those programs, every one of them was different. So that caused a huge turmoil during that time frame as well. And we're now dealing with the after effects of that when it comes to the idle money and whatnot. So, I probably in 2025, I think it's going to increase our volume because it's going to have stabilized even more, even no matter what happens with an election. I think we know something's going to occur economically depending on who gets in, but when it comes to the stabilization of those businesses and what our business is, I think 2025 is probably going to be a standout year just for that fact.
I certainly hope you are correct.
Yes, I support that 100%, Julie.
I do too. I mean, I've been involved in SBA lending for a very, 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 very long time and been through different election cycles. And only in the past 8 years, maybe a little longer, has SBA and the Small Business Administration entered into a more partisan culture. Everything about SBA before was bipartisan for every single year. And in my opinion, the bipartisan support and nature of small businesses is what we need so that this program can continue to thrive in the way that it has in the past and the way that lenders who are active lenders in the SBA program can feel comfortable that their funding sources will always be there because being a zero subsidy program. So we hope that that is, let's say the theory behind being zero subsidy prevails and that the legislators and the powers that be at the SBA understand that that basic fact is what makes this engine churn, is because banks know that they can depend on that program being there. And it's so important for small businesses to have this in their back pocket, because SBA, I always thought when I worked at SBA 40 years ago that it was the best kept secret in the federal government. But as time has gone on and people do come out of the woodwork to explain how good this program is for small businesses, that this will continue and flourish in the way that Julie just spoke about. And I truly hope so, because it has always been that way in the past, and I can't imagine that that won't prevail.
Well, even I'm sure you remember, Lynn, when we lost funding multiple different years in a row, or we ran out of funding, we always survived.
Yeah. We did. And interestingly enough, though, there were not as many banks participating at the time, because when the funding ran out, if you had built up an entire SBA lending department, what were all those people doing, during the funding slowdown? I mean, they would change it so you couldn't do debt refinancing, and they would do different things so that you could still get money out on the streets. But it was certainly easier as a manager of a department to sleep at night knowing that wasn't going to be the issue, that there would be other ones. But you're right. We did always figure out a way to keep it going. But I also think that that's just the nature of small business being the backbone of our country, that they just can't let it slip away. And I think that,
yeah, and we see what a difference it makes. I mean, there aren't other options for a lot of these small businesses. And even though it's not like mom and pop business small, like there's still like large businesses, but they, relatively speaking, but they also, again, there aren't other funding sources. So, we talked about those other credit boxes. And so that would be a significant fail to the economy, if any of that goes away.
And as bank regulations get tighter and they can't do certain things, we know that the SBA's guarantee to the bank can make up for a multitude of credit factors. And that's the beauty of this program. And that's what people need to understand and keep it going. But this is what helps all of us, obviously, to help those people buy businesses that are collateral light and cash flow successful, because that's the nature of what that guarantee does for these banks, for all types of businesses.
Yep.
Speaking of types of businesses, what do you think? Do we have a concentration of any type or any industry, or do you think we see everything across the board equally? What do you think, Heather?
You know, I just looking at my projects and kind of what I've worked on the past year, I think it's stunning the diversity of industries that we support. And like I said, it's what is truly unique is when you learn again that what everyone's passion is and how they've built businesses around a vision and a belief. And you know, whether it's as simple as, you know, we do some manufacturing and some, you know, fundamental business models, but we do e-commerce. We literally see it all. And it is just, it's why it's why our jobs are so interesting. But the fact that we have solutions across the board is also how we can be most helpful. We, for better or worse, we do see it all. And so, and I think we, again, for various industries, and we know what banks, by the way, if we have consistent, you know, the two that come to mind for me, or because I spent a lot of time working on, one was an entertainment, being, you know, an entertainment industry and restaurant, or hotels. Like, we know what banks are good at doing them and what banks aren't, but otherwise we really can find a solution for everybody.
That's great. I remember back in the day that I saw preponderance of hospitality businesses in my world, but as time went on, it seemed to morph more into service businesses and just the nature of life and so forth. But now I truly believe it's going to continue to expand, like Heather was talking about, because I believe that more and more entrepreneurs are coming out of the woodwork to start their own businesses after all this, and realizing that, you know, they can do what they have done inside of a corporate world as an outsourced resource for businesses and be more independent. Do you think do you see that? Do you think that's a trend or just an idea I have in my head?
I would say you're correct, because I've actually looked at several startups this year that are people that are doing exactly that. They've been working in that world for years and have decided that it's time they take the plunge and do it themselves. So yeah, I mean, I would absolutely agree in that commentary.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that. I don't know how quickly that'll happen, but I do think that people see that opportunity to, and some employers are fine with outsourcing certain jobs to the individuals that they know have done it for a very long time, but then being able to take it to other companies and use, you know, capitalize on their own strengths. I think that may be something else that we see going forward. Yeah. So in conclusion to our conversation today, what would you like our audience of entrepreneurs, basically, what would you like to leave them as a takeaway about either your career at MultiFunding, the culture of MultiFunding, the vision? What do you think, ladies? What would you like to say as your closing remarks?
Well, I think I do want to touch on the team a little bit, because I know I brought up again our dynamic, and we truly are a team. And what's kind of unique about MultiFunding is, as a business, because Ami, you know, we are Ami's business, the perception is that Ami is laid back and that we are very casual, but our work is quite the contrary. And it's really interesting to be able to pair both. And I think it's why we all enjoy working with each other so much, but everyone is, I mean, we take responsiveness really seriously. We take solutions, we take timelines very seriously. And so for us, it really helps us, again, deliver for our clients, but it also helps us, our job as we're matchmaking and trying to find the best lender for different solutions. Sometimes we can't continue to work with lenders. And so we only want the best for our clients, and we're constantly filtering that. And we just had a long call about that this morning. And so again, the two things I think that stand out the most, again, about multi-funding are our tight-knit working relationship. We truly are a team, and we rely on each other for to share expertise consistently, which really helps us deliver for our clients. And that's kind of the pride in our product. But we are happy to do what we do all day, and take pride in doing it well.
Thanks. I think that's wonderful. Julie, can you add anything to that?
Well, she kind of took all my thunder, but
No, that's okay.
well, I mean, the biggest reason I think that people should absolutely be calling us for assistance is not only we have an extensive background between everybody in our group, from you and your previous SBA to Heather and her previous work experience, me with my previous work experience. But then also the fact that we have the multiple different credit boxes, and it makes it much easier for a customer to get the funding that they need versus having to sit there and work with one lender, and they go months and months and months and then get declined, and where they could have been approved and owned that business, within 45 to 60 days versus 6 months later, they come to us and we get it completed for them in a timely manner. I mean, those are the big takeaways that I would give anybody. I mean, granted, yes, we work remotely, and so you're probably not going to meet us in person, but we're going to get it done for you.
That's true. I think you ladies said it perfectly. I am thrilled that you were able to jump on our podcast and help our audience see who else is on the team with Ami and myself. And thank you for your time. And thank you, everyone, for listening.